Hello and welcome to Animal Zone with Professor Monzon. Today we continue, in fact, we complete our exploration of the diversity of life. In this video, we will focus on us, humans. And I say we complete just for the purposes of this series because we have just really just scratched the surface of the surface of the surface of the animal kingdom. But I hope you've enjoyed this series. All right, today's lesson really is a continuation of the last one, which focused on mammals. Most of this material comes from Hickman's Integrated Principles of Zoology, chapter 28. Well, actually, I added a lot of material into this slideshow that is not in the text, so I hope you enjoy it. Okay, I left off with this provocative question last time. Why do women have full breasts even when not lactating and even past menopause? And why do men have nipples? I don't expect you to actually have an answer to these questions. I post them mostly to provoke some thought. There are some hypotheses about why women have full breasts and about why men have nipples. One of them, for example, is that one reason why women may have full breasts after puberty all the way to menopause is to attract and retain a mate. Not too different from how fireflies may flash their little tail to attract a mate, or peacocks will flash the fan of their tail feathers and shake their little booty to attract a mate. Men and women have features that may be there to attract a mate. Now, if we look under the hood of these hypotheses, we presuppose that there is an evolutionary cause or an adaptive function to some of these features that are part of our human biology. And that is really why I left you with that cliffhanger last time, because today the focus of today's lesson is on human evolution. Because human evolution is characterized by the same microevolutionary and macroevolutionary processes evident in other animal groups. So all the things that we've discussed up to now in reviewing the different animal groups also apply to humans. And while humans may be the pinnacle of creation according to some religious traditions, there may be some validity to that theologically. However, zoologically, scientifically, humans are just a tip of a branch of a massive, massive tree of life where all organisms are interconnected. So all extant species, all species that are living today are just these tips that are connected to one another in an unbroken chain of ancestry. So we are connected to every other species of animals. We are chordates, we are vertebrates, we are mammals, we are eutherians. That's just a fancy scientific word for placental mammals. And we belong to an order of animals called the primates. Primates are a group of mammals that also include the prosimians, the monkeys, and the non-human apes. So what makes a primate a primate? There are 5 things. Primates have grasping hands and grasping feet with opposable thumbs, although in humans, the opposable thumb became parallel to the rest of the toes. But a lot of primates have opposable toes, big toes. Primates have nails instead of claws. Although those are homologous features, the nail structurally is different, where it is flat and it is not, it's not pointy, it's not sharp. Primates have flexible limbs and broad mobility of the shoulder joints. So other mammals have a mobile shoulder joint so that their limbs can move, but none of in no other animal group really matches the mobility of primates in their shoulder mobility, right? So where we can move our arms almost in any direction. No other mammals can do that. Primates have forward-facing eyes and binocular vision, and primates have a highly developed brain and a visual sense. So other animal groups are very reliant on their olfaction, their sense of smell. However, primates are very reliant on their sense of sight. Here are a few primate groups. So this is a tarsier because it definitely has binocular vision. This animal has excellent night vision. Here is a baboon carrying its young on its back. Here's a gorilla carrying its young on its back. And here is a human carrying a beautiful young girl on its back. Okay, so let's start here. To talk about the origin, the evolutionary origins of humans, let's talk about what Darwin had to say. When he wrote The Origin of Species in 1859, he understood that what he was about to propose was going to be very controversial. He understood his times very well. So he mostly shied away from discussing the implications of his theory for human origins. And he left it just one little sentence all the way at the end of the book, literally on the last page, where he said that his theory, or through his theory, light will be thrown on the origin of man and his history. That is literally the only thing he said about human evolution in his landmark book. It wasn't until 1871 where he published The Descent of Man when he really dove deep into the topic, right? So no more avoiding the issue. He dedicated this book, or half of the book, to talking about the evolution of humans. And he wrote, "Man still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin." And he had a lot of different lines of evidence, one of those being embryology. For example, in this figure, this shows the early embryo of a human, and here in the bottom is the early embryo of a dog, and you see the clear similarities due to homology. Then he wrote a book that focuses on the emotions of humans and animals. In this book, he wrote, "The appearance of dejection in young orangs and chimpanzees when out of health is as plain and almost as pathetic as in the case of our children." Basically saying orangutans and chimpanzees are as pathetic as human children when they are sick. And this, for example, is an illustration of the musculature of the human face. And surprise, surprise, other apes have pretty much the same muscles, and which is why they make similar facial expressions. This here is a cladogram of the primates. Okay, remember that when we say primates, we're talking about the taxonomic order Primata. Traditionally, the primates were divided into the prosimians, which were the lemurs, lorises, and tarsiers, and the anthropoids, which were the monkeys and the apes. Okay, prosimians meaning like primitive primates, and the simians or arthropoids meaning the more advanced primates, the monkeys and the apes. Now, what do you notice about the group prosimians? You should know by now whether this is a monophyletic group, a paraphyletic group, or a polyphyletic group. If you look closely, you should be able to see how prosimians is a paraphyletic group. What about monkeys? The monkeys of the world. There are the New World monkeys and then the old world monkeys. If you look at those two, you should be able to tell that they are a paraphyletic group. All right, a couple of take-home messages from here. The hypothetical primate ancestor lived somewhere between 40 and 60 million years ago. Okay, that is after the extinction of most dinosaurs, right? So now we're in the Cenozoic, the age of mammals, where the hypothetical primate ancestor diversified into these various lineages. Another thing to consider here is the paraphyly of the world's monkeys. So here we have human, chimp, gorilla, orangutan, and gibbon. This is a baboon as a representative of old world monkeys, and this looks like a spider monkey as a representative of the new world monkeys. What this shows here is that humans are more closely related to old world monkeys than old world monkeys are to new world monkeys. Okay. The other thing to consider here is something that we've already discussed here, the monophily of the hominoids. This is family, this is superfamily Hominoidea, which includes the gibbons in the family Hylobatidae and the hominids in the family Hominidae. Now, let's zoom into one of these groups. Let's talk about just the great apes, the hominids. Okay, let's just go back here. Remember, the great apes are humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans. These are the great apes in family Hominidae. Gibbons are considered the lesser apes in family Hylobatidae. Okay, so we're going to zoom in here. And we see that the living species are the orangutan, gorilla, the bonobo, and chimp, and humans. However, there were all these extinct species that make up this tree. Chimpanzees and humans split about 7 million years ago. And after the split, there were various species that were part of this lineage. We call that lineage the hominins. Okay, so all of these are considered the hominids in the family Hominidae. Here, we're going to consider just these species that are in this lineage, the hominins. So let's zoom in to that branch of hominins. And we see that it's actually a branching branch, right? We see that there were various species that split one from another. Okay, this is a figure from the textbook, and I added to this figure the years of discovery of these fossils and the location of the initial discovery. So what you see here is that there are several species of hominins. Another thing that you could see here is a trend in increasing brain size. So that is what is shown here, brain size measured in cubic centimeters. Of course, we're using the size of the cranium as a proxy for how large the brain was. So we see here in Sahelanthropus that the brain was about 320 to 380 cubic centimeters, and in humans, it's much, much larger. The other thing that you should notice from this figure is the locations of these fossils. Of course, these are only the locations of the first discoveries, and obviously the species lived in other places, but it is not random. You see, this one was found in Chad in Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa. So you see this lineage of hominins diversified in Africa. It wasn't here until this species that was found in Indonesia. So we see a few Asian species, and then we see Homo heidelbergensis, which was discovered in Heidelberg, Germany, and Homo neanderthalensis, also discovered in Germany, that we see some species of hominins in Europe. One of the things that sets the hominins apart from other hominids is their ability to walk upright on 2 feet. Now, what anatomical features are associated with bipedalism and erect posture in hominids? Okay, to be able to walk upright, the body needed to make some adjustments. And so I want to encourage you to explore that on your own. What anatomical features are associated with bipedalism? Also, what was one early hypothesis about the ecological conditions that made bipedality advantageous? I'll give you a clue. It's related to climate change. However, that popular hypothesis has been called into question recently, and so I want you to explore what is one of the major criticisms of that hypothesis. One of the landmark findings in this family tree of humans was Lucy, here shown by this mostly complete fossil finds of an extinct hominin, and this is obviously a reconstruction of what she may have looked like, and she is drawn here next to a modern human female for reference. Okay, but Lucy was an adult, and Lucy belongs to a species in the genus Australopithecus. Okay, so you see that Lucy was already completely upright. All right, let's focus on some of the more recent species of hominins. We see Homo habilis here. Homo habilis was the first Homo that created stone tools. In fact, you see here, we don't even see a Homo until Homo habilis, right? So here we see Sahelanthropus, Australopithecus, Ardipithecus, and in here we see the first Homo that was able to create stone tools. In fact, that may be one of the defining features of our genus, is the ability to create stone tools. We see here Homo erectus about 1.9 million years ago as the first animal species to be able to control and use fire. We know that because in the excavation sites where Homo erectus has been found, we also see burnt remains of bones and of other tools, suggesting that they would cook their food. Homo heidelbergensis was discovered in Heidelberg, Germany. However, more fossils of this species have been discovered in other parts of the world, like elsewhere in Europe and in Africa. The evidence that we have so far from fossils suggests that Homo heidelbergensis split into 2 species, Homo neanderthalensis in Europe and Homo sapiens in Africa. So those were 2 geographically and reproductively isolated populations that were considered 2, or that are now considered 2 separate species. However, anatomically modern humans appeared in Africa somewhere about 200,000 years ago. Then they expanded out of Africa through the Middle East, and some of them went north and westward into Europe. Some of them went eastward into Asia. Well, when Homo sapiens met up with Homo neanderthalensis, they didn't just fight. Some of them had relations with each other and interbred. So this is an interesting example of interspecific hybridization. A similar thing occurred in Asia with a species called the Denisovans. This is a species of humans that is where there's not much known about it. It's kind of a recent discovery. And so I also drew this line here just to illustrate that there was some gene flow between these two species, even though they were geographically and reproductively separated for a long time. When Homo sapiens expanded into Europe, they made a secondary contact, and apparently the reproductive isolation was not impermeable. So there was some gene flow, which is why, well, actually, I wanted to ask you here, what evidence indicates that Homo sapiens interbred with Neanderthals in Europe? Like, how do we know this? I'll leave that for you to find out. And what happened to the Neanderthals? So basically, if there was some gene flow between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, and some Homo sapiens are still carrying around some of the genes of Neanderthals, can we say that Neanderthals really went extinct if their genes are still around? Well, that's another, that's more of a philosophical question, but I want you to really uh, give it a good faith effort to answer these two questions and be able to explain what is the evidence that indicates that interbreeding between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens occurred. I want you to watch this video. It's a really neat and short video. Your body is a temple, but it's also a museum of natural history. So you can click on the link on the PDF, or I'll also put the link on the description to this video. Well, this completes our exploration of the diversity of animal life. I hope you've enjoyed the series. And as is always my wish for you, be strong and courageous.